Welcome, dear friends, to another session of meditation and Dharma talk, and we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. So let's begin, starting to come into the meditation, paying attention to the posture and closing the eyes, coming into the body to sense the uprightness of the body, to sense the skeleton that's holding this body in shape, that's giving the body its form, its structure, and aligning the spine and pelvis, the hip bones, and the head, the skull, aligning them so that there's an uprightness to the posture. And we can feel out any areas of tension, of holding, and just let the attention come to any sense of tightness, tension, stress in the body. And simply by allowing ourselves to look at any places that are tense or tight or obstructed in any way, we can notice how just paying attention can allow for relaxation, kind of gentle softness, like having a massage. We're massaging the body with the mind, with the kind attention that we're offering. And so we can feel the belly, the shoulders, all the big muscles that hold the legs in position in relation to the body, gluteal muscles, the big thigh muscles, just seeing any tension there, any tension in the shoulders, any holding in the belly. And we can start to notice how there's a softening and a relaxing that starts to happen quite naturally as we sit and attend to the body. So we can really give our full attention to body sitting, body breathing. This is its time. This is the time to, in a way, change our habits, in a way to, rather than living in our heads and spending a lot of our time thinking about this and that, we can actually simplify and feel the quieter aspects of our experience, the more subtle, the less demonstrative. This body, which is constantly replenishing itself, being nourished and fueled by the food we take in, the water, the drink, the liquids we take in, liquid and solid nutrition. It's constantly digesting and using the fuel for energy. It's breathing. There's motion, constant motion within and without the body. And mostly we are oblivious to all of these processes, remarkable processes that are going on in every cell of the body in every moment. And it's a huge realm for Dhamma for investigation of Dhamma. So let's investigate and come into this realm, come into our temple, come into the Dhamma hall here within, because this is where we live at this point. This is our place. So noticing the breath, noticing the movement of the breath in the body, all different parts of the body, indeed all of the body responds to the in-breath, to the out-breath. So let's see how we can attend to body breathing and how much we can notice, how much is going on. Here is the ideal meditation object, and it's always here for us. It's always present for us. And it kind of leads us inwards, doesn't it? Leads us onwards, because it's in a way very compelling. Once we start to pay attention to the body, it can become quite fascinating for us. So I'd like to invite you to observe the breath, observe the body, and to keep developing this wise attention as we sit together for about half an hour. And I will ring the gong to end the session, so we can sit quietly in our separate places and yet together. So welcome again, dear friends, to this session on it. It's a very hot afternoon here in California. Wherever you are, whatever time zone you're in, it's very, very good to have the opportunity to be together, to practice meditation and also to share on Dharma. So next I'd like to offer some words on Dharma, and I'll begin by paying homage to the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ dhammāṃ sanghaṃ namasami. So I actually spoke a little bit at the end of the session last week on the 10 fetters. The topic came up in our conversation, and so I thought this week I would explain. Somebody asked the question about what are the 10 fetters, I think, and I'd like to explain how this fits into the Buddha's teachings, this concept of the 10 fetters. And it's very helpful actually to consider this teaching on the 10 fetters, because it's another framework or another perspective that can be very useful for us when we consider the path of practice. And particularly, it's helpful to consider the first 3 fetters, because the Buddha said that if we're able to break through, free ourselves up from these first 3 fetters, these distortions of view, then we are a stream enterer. We're bound to succeed in completely liberating the heart from all suffering. So it's quite good in a way then to perhaps focus on the first 3 fetters, considering that once we've managed to see our way through and let go of these burdens, this bondage, these delusions, then we can kind of continue to strive for liberation, but with a much clearer sense of where we're headed and what is the path. In other places in the suttas, the Buddha speaks about the qualities of a stream enterer as somebody who is fully confident in the Buddha, in the Dhamma, and in the Sangha, and in the training, in the Eightfold Path of practice. Somebody who has no doubt about the way of practice and the fruits of practice, the inevitability of gaining the fruits of the practice. So how wonderful to have this kind of confidence and certainty, in a way certainty, in a way clear seeing. So yeah, the fetters, the 10 fetters, are mentioned in a few places in the Pali Canon. They're not one of the kind of primary ways in which the Buddha spoke on Dhamma. He gave all sorts of very good pointers to practice through his description of the 37 Bodhipakkhiya Dhammas. This is the more frequent ways in which he spoke about practice. He spoke in terms of the Eightfold Path, in terms of the 5 friends, the 5 powers, the right efforts, the spiritual powers, and so forth. But the 10 fetters are significant because they're mentioned in a few places. I found reference to them in the Samyutta Nikaya. in the great chapter, which is the fifth and final chapter of the Samyutta Nikaya, the teachings, the shorter teachings of the Buddha, collected discourses of the Buddha that are not middle length, not long, but actually fall into the short category. And the fifth chapter, the great chapter, has many chapters within it, sub-chapters within it. And one of them contains, it's a chapter on the floods. It contains reference to the 10 fetters. So the Buddha here describes what these fetters are, lists them for us. There are a few other references, another reference in the great chapter, explaining the different stages of insight that correlate with letting go of the various fetters. And there's also reference to them in Anguttara Nikaya, the numbered discourses. In the Book of Tens, as we kind of expect, the 10 fetters are again listed and described. And also in the Book of Fours, there's a reference to the 4 types of people, again relating to how skillfully, how well seen through, how well these fetters have been discarded, put aside by the 4 different stages of practice, the 4 different stages of liberation. And I'll describe this. I'll try and explain this kind of these teachings as much as we have available to us in the Pali Canon on the 10 fetters. And there's one other discourse, also in, I think in Anguttara Nikaya, where the Buddha's speaking, it's in the Book of Fives, he's actually speaking about the 5 indriyas, the 5 spiritual friends, which are faith, stillness, mindfulness, effort, and wisdom. And in relation to the 5 friends, the Buddha says, that if we really develop these 5 friends, these 5 spiritual qualities, then we will be able to overcome the 10 fetters. So, having given a bit of groundwork and some references in the suttas, if you want to look them up, the easiest way to look them up would be to go on to Sutta Central and just search under the title of Fetters, and you'll see all these references are there, and other references too, because the Buddha actually spoke about, he used this word, sangyojana, which really just means shackles or chains or fetters. He used this word in relation to other aspects of our experience. For instance, in one sutta, he said that the 6 senses are fetters for us if we identify with them, if we consider them to be me and mine. The inputs through the 6 sense doors, seeing, smelling, hearing, tasting, touching, and thinking. If we consider these experiences, these aspects of experience to be me and mine, then this is another way in which we're fettered. So you'll see a few other references where this word is used by the Buddha, all very interesting, all very helpful to consider. But coming back to the standard way in which the Buddha used this word sangyojana, that which is yoked together, that which is tied up, he was referring to mostly to the 10 fetters. And so the first 3 fetters, these are the fetters that all ordinary people are laboring, we're all kind of trapped and imprisoned by these fetters. We're all actually hemmed in without necessarily realizing that this is the case by these fetters. And when we begin to practice, we can start to consider how we may be duped by Mara, we may be deceived in these different ways. And these three first fetters are, we can say all of the fetters are tendencies or inclinations of a deluded mind. The mind that is steeped in ignorance will tend to follow certain courses, certain ways of thinking, ways of relating to reality that are distorted, that are painful, that are a cause of bondage. So let's look at the first, and we can talk about, let's talk about personality view. This fetter of personality view is one of the first three fetters, and it's the sense of self that we are frequently caught up in, referring to our experience and all that we feel that we own, all that we feel that we are. And in many ways, I find the easiest way to consider this is in terms of the five khandhas. So in terms of the body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. So every time we consider, unthinkingly, really, unknowingly, unwisely, consider that any of these aspects of our experience are in some way belonging to us or define us, then we're labouring, we're tied, we're caught up in this fetter of personality view. Silabhata paramasa. It's a cause of great suffering, and it's also a cause of great we put a lot of energy into creating, in a way, these illusions of self, because it's a sense of continuity. This selfing, it's having a sense of past and future, isn't it? And having a sense of being somebody moving through time. And it's very compelling because when we're sitting in meditation, let alone in everyday life, we have memories come up, and we truly feel very difficult not to have a sense of they're my memories. It's my life. This is my past. My parents, my family, my traumas, my difficulties. The way I am. I'm just like this. All these different ways in which we create ourselves. And actually, in relation to considering this fetter of self-view, or personality view, the truth is that none of these things actually can be really held to. None of these things can be relied upon to last. None of them are in our control. And, the sooner we can let go of the sense of ownership and the sense of agency around the body, the feelings, the thoughts, the memories, the perceptions, and so forth, then the happier we can be, the freer we can be, the lighter we can be. And so it's good to consider this teaching, to hear from the Buddha that we are deluded when we have a sense of my life. We're deluding ourselves when we have a sense of my past. So when memories come up for us in our meditation practice, when we're recollecting past events, there's nothing wrong with that. Indeed, the word sati means to recollect, to remember. It's quite healthy and wholesome to kind of come to terms with our past, to be aware of our past. Language is difficult here because it's not really our past, but to be aware of what is in the mind, what are these mental contents and how the mind works. But the important point is that when memories arise, we can recognize, this isn't me, this isn't mine. It's not even necessarily true, is it? Because, often our recollections can be rather skewed, rather distorted. It's like when a crime is committed and there are a dozen witnesses. When asked, what did they see, what actually happened, each person will pretty invariably give a different answer. There'll be a lot of variation in what's recollected. And so it is with memory. It's very prone to distortion, isn't it? And it can be coloured by our state of mind at the time, by our emotions, and by our situation as the recollection arises. And so all of this is extremely shaky, very tenuous, very unreliable. And to believe our memories is unwise. To have a kind of question mark, to be open to consideration that maybe they're not actually very true or very accurate, is quite helpful for us. And to understand from the teachings of the Buddha, if not through our own experience, that these are not personal. These are just mental contents, and they arise and they pass. And I often feel in practice that we can be very glad that thoughts of the past will arise, thoughts of the future will arise, because it gives us an opportunity to let go of the sense of me and mine, because it's liable to be present until we're free of this fetter. We're liable to have a sense of kind of investment in these thoughts and memories, and also concerns for the future. We're liable to have a bit of a sense of a tethering there, aren't we? They pull on the heart. And when we can practice and notice what happens when memories and future thoughts arise around this me, my life, how does it feel? What's actually going on? Is the mind actually tethered, and in some way is the view distorted here? Is there a different way of experiencing, a different way of looking at this experience as an impersonal flow of mental phenomena? And when we give ourselves the opportunity to consider in this way, we can really notice how possible it is to free up, to see thinking as a stream. It's like a stream, it's like a flow, and thoughts come and go. They come and go, and they have a kind of their own trajectory. They have a life of their own, and we can really step back and we can observe this process. And the same with all the other khandhas, perceptions, consciousness. Is it mine? Is this consciousness mine? Can I choose how it receives the world? Can I choose to switch it on or switch it off? No, it's not. I have no agency over this, but I can bear witness to it. I can experience it. I can learn about it, and I can learn through developing understanding by observing, by witnessing with wise attention this quality of consciousness. Then I can see how it's possible to let go of any sense of ownership and to watch, again, a flow of dhammas here. The same for feelings, the same for this body, which has its own agenda. We're sort of we have a feeling of inhabiting this body, don't we? We're kind of in here somewhere. Often it's behind the eyes, because the eye sense door is very compelling for us. We're really receiving a great deal through this sense door, and it takes our attention, and So we can often feel that we're kind of just behind there somewhere. And we can notice this. Notice how the input through the sense doors has, again, a quality, a flavour of self, selfhood, ownership. We knit together, or consciousness, one of its functions, until it stops doing this, it spends a lot of energy, expends a lot of energy in kind of knitting together our experience through all the sense doors and creating a sense of continuity, a sense of seamless selfhood. It's quite remarkable. This is the magician's trick. It's a sleight of hand. It's an illusion. There are these different dhammas arising and passing, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. They come and go, and there's nothing behind them. There's nothing that's pulling the strings. There's nothing that's in charge here. They're all quite separate consciousnesses. And we can start to consider this and begin to notice selfing, this sense of creating, adding to the experiences by making them me and mine. So this fetter of personality view is something to really consider. And really, if we can take on board this teaching and apply the teachings of the Buddha to our experience, we can help ourselves a great deal in letting go of the sense of self, loosening the grip. It's a very it's almost like we're swimming in the ocean of self, and it's very hard to see. Just like a fish is not necessarily aware of the water of the ocean, or we're not aware of the air around us, that we're constantly feeding on. This is what we really feed on every moment. We're breathing it in, and it's all around us. But how much time do we spend really noticing the air, even noticing breathing? For most people, they're quite oblivious of this extraordinary process that's going on all the time. And so it is that we don't necessarily notice the self-making, the I-making, the my-making, which is happening pretty consistently all the time until we let go and see clearly and drop this fetter of self-view, of personality view. So these are just a few words about this fetter. Second fetter I'd like to talk about is the attachment to rites and rituals. And this is very interesting because if we kind of consider ourselves and also all those around us, we can see how much a part of our life this can be. And it's also quite interesting to see how this fetter of attachment to rites and rituals can really come up a lot in spiritual practice, in religions, in the most important ways in which people are trying to make sense of their world and chart their course through life. We're prone to kind of magical thinking. We're prone to wishful thinking. In the time of the Buddha, there were so many great spiritual seekers who were caught up in this fetter of attachment to rituals. It was very common, and actually it still is common to this day, that people will go to sacred places and perform various rituals in order to purify themselves, in order to free themselves from suffering, free themselves from sin. And many people, will feel that this is a very important aspect of their spiritual path, their spiritual life. For instance, going to the Ganges River or any other sacred river and bathing is considered to be by many, many, many people a way of purifying ourselves, of ridding ourselves of our faults and sins, and like a sort of confession. Also, in other religions, going and confessing one's sins, there can be a belief that in doing so we clean the slate. We've dropped it all. The trouble with these ways of considering and thinking about reality is that the root cause of habits, unskillful behaviours, unskillful speech and so forth, the root cause is not really addressed. And, people are trying to do the good work and to improve themselves and to live a better life. And there can be some encouragement from going on pilgrimages and doing various rites and rituals and making confession. Definitely can be some benefits. But if there's a belief, a conviction that through these rituals one can be purified, then people are often disappointed in the long run, aren't they? Because the habits, the inclinations, the asava, the tendencies in the mind are untouched, unchanged. And, pity the poor sinner who goes to make confession and comes away with full of resolve and determination not to commit the same unwholesome acts again, ever again. But they don't have the ability, they don't have the means to really eradicate these tendencies. And so again, oftentimes, one will fall into the same kind of misbehaviors. And it's very poignant. So we really need to understand how actually to rid ourselves of the kilesa, of defilements, of unwholesome mind states. And rites and rituals are not going to do it for us, as we know, if we consider the Buddha's teachings. Actually, we have to do the work of investigation. We have to develop the Eightfold Path. We have to cultivate mindfulness and investigate what's going on inside. And really, through the meditation practice and keeping precepts and developing right view, we can slowly come to a place of uprooting the causes of defilements. And this is the Buddha again and again was saying that this is a gradual process, and it requires wisdom. It requires really a careful practice, determined practice, right effort, and so forth. And so to have any kind of belief, any kind of conviction that certain rituals or religious rites will do the work for us, that there's some power out there that can turn things around for us, is a fetter. This is the fetter of attachment to rites and rituals. And it's interesting, because of course in the Buddhist world there are many ways in which we practice rituals. We chant, we have pujas, people go to Buddhist shrines and they will, light candles and burn incense and leave flowers, bow and so forth. All these things are rituals. They can have their beauty, they can have their benefit, so long as we're not investing them with more power and agency than they actually have. So to bow, personally I find bowing quite a good practice. Taking this great big head and putting it down on the ground and in homage to the Buddha in homage to the qualities of awakening and the truth, the Dhamma, and those who have led the way for us, the Sangha, our teachers and guides. Feels good. It feels very wholesome and very appropriate to pay respects, and lighting candles, symbolizing, the light of awareness. Lighting incense, the scent of the incense, sort of symbolizing the ubiquitous nature of the truth, Dhamma. And the flowers, putting flowers on a shrine, signifying the Sangha. It's one way of looking at it. Flowers as all different, each one unique, just like people, just like the Sangha of human beings who are practicing well. And so we can, use these kinds of props, if you like, trappings, religious images and practices to uplift the heart, to inspire, to help the mind to focus on the practice and on the teachings. We can do this. There's nothing wrong with it. But to invest it with some kind of supernatural power to get us to Nibbana, clearly this would be a mistake. And it's a fine line, and I think it's helpful for us to consider if we find ourselves in situations where we're participating in or observing, rites and rituals taking place, then just to consider, how do we relate to this? What is it? What's actually going on here? What is the value? What is the drawback? How can I skillfully understand the benefit and the limitations of any kinds of rituals, rites and rituals? So not to dismiss them out of hand, but to understand their place in the scheme of things, if you like, and not to be caught up in this fetter of a magical thinking, of almost like childlike sense that there's somebody out there, some god or some great being who can take away all my suffering for me. No, in Buddhism, of course, as we know, one of the great benefits of the Buddha's teaching is that it's encouraging us to take responsibility, to see the karma and to work with the karma, the cause and effect, and to really quite, in a very mature, in a very adult, in a very wise way, to really face up to the suffering that's here, and to take responsibility and come to understand dukkha through experiencing the suffering right here. And in this way we can make changes. We can let go of suffering. We can let go of these fetters. So the third fetter of these three kind of principle, the three ways in which we delude ourselves prior to entering the stream. The third fetter is doubt, vicikicca. And this is not having full confidence in the path. And so therefore we could say, not fully understanding the path, not fully understanding the teachings of the Buddha. Because when we can really comprehend the teachings, then we can practice without any confusion or delusion about what we're doing. And, well, to a degree, we can say that when the fetter of doubt is seen through, then we're much less confused about the path of practice. We're much less steeped in ignorance. As I said before, there's a significant shift where we are bound to attain the goal of the spiritual practice. Nibbana is just a matter of time. So we're on course. The compass is pointing unfailingly in the right direction. Once doubt, the fetter of doubt, personality view, and attachment to rites and rituals, once these three fetters are seen through. So doubt in the Buddha's teachings, we can consider if we have questions, if we're not sure, we don't really fully understand how to practice, and we can ask questions and we can seek guidance and we can keep determining to, do the best we can. And it's very fortunate if we have any interest at all in meditation, because this is a way to really experience doubt if it's present for us, because it will be the sense of confusion and uncertainty about how to meditate, about how to practice. And we have a chance to investigate this sense. So the Buddha described it as like we're in the desert, we're lost, the view is obscured, we're confused, we don't know how to practice, we don't really fully believe that it's possible to practice. And this is where Sangha can really be of great benefit, because we can seek out spiritual friends, we can seek out guidance, ask our questions, and be willing when we're meditating to let go of the confusion, which is to let go of the thinking and to come into the body. Because when we pay attention to the body, watch the breath in our meditation practice, there's no doorway, there's no entry point then for doubt. So it's very helpful if we have meditation practice, we can overcome doubt, even just temporarily, by putting it aside and keep developing path factors, qualities, mindfulness, right effort, stillness. And this fetter of doubt, confusion, will slowly wear away. So seeking out good teachings, asking questions, and meditation can all help enormously to attenuate, to slowly dissolve this fetter of doubt. So these three fetters, good to consider them again and again, to question, is my view distorted? Am I subject to these fetters? We can ask ourselves again and again and just see where we create ourselves, where we create this one, where we behave as though and think as though we're in control here, where we create the past, where we create the future, where we give too much undue importance to rituals. Do we think that performing some rite or other is going to help us to liberate the heart from suffering? Do we have any doubts about the practice? So we can ask ourselves and contemplate these fetters and see our way through. And we can do this directly in this way, learning and considering the fetters. And we can also, we are also working with the fetters when we're practicing the Eightfold Path. Every path factor is a means to overcoming the fetters slowly but surely. Then there are 7 more. And there's a kind of sequence here. So these first 3 fetters are the most fundamental delusions that we're labouring under. And once they're seen through, we face up to another 7 fetters. But the truth is, of course, that we're working with all the fetters all the time. until we're free from them. So these other aspects of delusion will be present for us also, but they are more subtle. They are less easy to see through. They are more likely to shackle the heart, to trap us. They're more likely to be a kind of lens through which we're looking at the world. So we can just note that. And let's consider the next two fetters. A stream enterer is still working with these two fetters, and all the others also. They have let go of, they've seen through, they're free from the first three fetters, but these next two will still be playing out until a person is a once returner. These fetters will be very apparent. And even a once returner, which is the next stage of liberation on the path of practice, even such a person, Sakadagami, will have these fetters in perhaps more subtle forms manifesting for them. They have to work with them. Only a non-returner, an anagami, the third stage of liberation, only such a person as an anagami is actually free from these next two fetters. What are they? You'll know them very well. I know them very well. They are ill will and sense desire. Kama chanda, sense desire, and vyapada, ill will. So these two, the push and pull, the wanting and not wanting, the liking and disliking, the picking and choosing, that create heaven and hell right here for us. These two, this movement away from what is, this denial of reality, seeking for something more than what is, or wanting to get away from what is, desire and aversion. These two, we can work with them, and it's just wonderful to be aware of them. It's wonderful to consider them. We can be practicing day and night if we are conscious of the push and pull as they arise, these fetters, as they arise in relation to the world, in relation to this one. So we can make a practice of observing whenever desire, wanting comes up for us. It can be the most obvious obsession about some addiction or other that we have, desperate for this, the next cup of coffee, the next cigarette, the next fix of whatever it may be. It could be something completely mundane, completely harmless, but if we have that feeling of wanting, then this is the fetter of desire. And we can be aware of it. We can be aware of aversion when it arises, can't we? And feel it. Feel the beginnings, the stirring of aversion in the mind. And again, our meditation practice is enormously helpful for us to be able to be alert and aware and vigilant around noticing these qualities of wanting and not wanting as they arise. Meditation is so helpful because we can feel in the body the tightening, the tension, the unease that arise along with any kind of desire or aversion. And we can get very good at checking to see if there's anything there, if there's any argument with reality that's going on for us. So to be alert and be aware of these fetters is to work through them, is to liberate ourselves from them slowly but surely. So let's notice where there's desire, where there's wanting. Let's notice when there's a, however subtle, a turning away, a not wanting. And let's understand that these are fetters for the mind. These are suffering for us. And in observing and noticing and being willing to feel the effect of these mind states, the wanting and the not wanting, we can free up slowly but surely and experience, the end. From time to time, this happens for us, doesn't it? We can work with some kind of craving, some kind of aversion, and we can see it's arising, it's lasting for a while, and then it's passing away. We can notice these little mini liberations where one shackle, one link of the chain of the fetter is falling away, has fallen away. And so it's a process. And the more we familiarize ourselves with these ways in which we're caught up and deluded and suffering, then we can slowly extricate ourselves from this bondage. So that's 5 fetters now that have been discussed. Well, my goodness, there's actually another 5. And these again are still more subtle tendencies, inclinations of the mind that is not free, the mind that is steeped in ignorance. We may be less ignorant when the first 5 fetters are either seen through completely or, wearing away, diminishing. We're freeing up to some extent. We may be less ignorant when there's less fetters to work with, but they can be also very tenacious. So let's consider the next 2 fetters, and they are attachment to certain states of mind, attachment to pleasure, attachment to higher sources of bliss, of rapture. We may be really freeing up very well from sense desire, this lower fetter, but there may still be in the mind a real longing, a yearning for bliss in our meditation, for heavenly states of mind. So we can be very aware that there's nothing in this world that we want to cling to. There's nothing that we want to hold to. There's nothing that we want to make me or mine. Nothing whatsoever. However wonderful, however blissful, however joyful a mind state it has within it the danger of I-making and my-making, the danger of getting caught up and trying to make it last, trying to get it back again. And we can experience this in our practice. It's not uncommon for people to go on retreats and to have some peaceful moments, some even blissful experiences, because the conditions are such that the mind is undisturbed, there's no distraction. We can really come to a place of stillness sometimes. And this is so delicious for us. This is so much more attractive, so much more happy, so much more pleasant than any kind of sense pleasure. There's no food, there's no feeling in the body that can match the kind of pleasure that one can experience through meditation. And the danger, of course, is that we may still be in danger of becoming addicted to something very wholesome, addicted to something very refined, and yet still addicted. So this danger, this fetter, there are 2 fetters, the fetter of being attracted and attached to divine states of mind, feelings in the body also of rapture and bliss. Heavenly states, a heavenly destination, higher rebirth. All these attachments and wishes and hopes are covered by this description of this 6th fetter. And the seventh fetter is the attachment to disembodied states of bliss, so purely mental bliss, purely mental aspects of reality that are so sublime, so peaceful, so attractive to us, that have to be let go of, that have to be seen through. And these are the fifth to the eighth jhanas, the arupa jhanas, the states of mind where the body is no longer present. There is only pure mental energy, and it's such an equanimous, such a peaceful, such a still and delightful state. 5 different jhanas, infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, and neither perception nor non-perception. These very, very subtle states of a very still mind, delightful abodes. When the Buddha became the Buddha, he wanted to share his teachings with his teachers who had taught him how to practice jhana. 2 great teachers. He'd learned from them how to experience these very sublime states of mind. And he couldn't teach them because they'd passed away. But actually, that wasn't an obstacle for the Buddha. The fact that they'd passed away was actually not an obstacle, because the Buddha could visit all the different realms of existence. He had the ability, he had the understanding of samsara to be able to go anywhere. But there's just these 4 abodes that the Buddha could not visit. And these were the abodes of those who pass away practicing these very high jhanas, because they go into a state that is so still, so solitary, it's unreachable. And they will linger there, they will rest there, they will delight in being in such realms for a very, very, very long time. So in this way we can appreciate that these high focused, still states of concentration, of meditation, are like a trap. They're like a fetter for us, because we can get caught up for a very long time if we attach to these states of mind, if we cultivate them, if we give them importance. This is not the way to come out of suffering. This is not the way to purify the heart. It's a very blissful abiding for a very long time, but it doesn't accomplish the goal of spiritual practice, which is freedom from suffering, from greed, hatred, and delusion. So it's like being in stasis, a very wonderful stasis, but it's a stillness that's, underlying that stillness, beneath that stillness, kind of festering away under the surface of that stillness. There may be roots of greed, hatred, and aversion, and eventually they will have to manifest. And so for a person who's caught up in such blissful states, eventually they all come to an end. And what happens next? Big suffering, because there's still that suffering within the mind, within the heart. So we can consider these fetters, and they're not so out of reach. Yes, one would have to be a very attained being to be grappling purely with these fetters, not with the 5 lower fetters that I've described. But, we can all have a taste of these experiences. We can all wish for a heavenly state. We can all incline towards greater pleasure, more subtle pleasures, more refined states of mind. And we can experience these things in our meditation. And it's a real danger. Even very respected and revered spiritual practitioners can get caught up in these very refined states and addicted to them. So we can be very conscious that there are subtle dangers on the spiritual path. And quite simply, let's remember that there is nothing whatsoever that is to be held to. There is nothing that we don't want to let go of. Anything that grabs us, we need to be very alert and aware of any inclination to want to repeat an experience, to want to cultivate any particular kind of experience, to want to, bring up conditions that will recreate a meditation experience for us. Let's be aware of this. Let's be aware of the danger. Let's not get addicted to retreats or to jhana or to any particular states of mind, any particular feelings in the body. And the final three fetters, these are the fetters that are still trapping, encompassing, kind of shackling the heart of even those who are very close to liberation. Even the non-returner, the anagami, is dealing with these last three fetters. Very subtle defilements, very subtle ways in which ignorance is manifesting. And they are restlessness, that kind of subtle agitation in the mind that moves, the mind that cannot be still, the fidgeting mind. Restlessness is one of the last fetters to go. And there's an amazing biography of Ajahn Mun where he's describing his last breakthrough to arahantship. And it's very interesting that in his description of the mind, watching the mind, he describes how the mind is circling round and round and round, constantly moving, constantly seeking, never still. And this was his last kind of experience of the deluded mind before it came to rest. So it's a very powerful description in this biography of Ajahn Mun. Really beautiful to hear how it was for him when he made this final breakthrough and could come to the place of absolute peace and well-being, absolute unshakability of the heart. The other two fetters, final fetters to go, one of them is mana, is conceit. Conceit in the sense of having any trace whatsoever of a sense of selfhood, of a sense of being here. Anything that's here, anything that's lasting, anything that has substance. So perhaps we can consider that it's an encouragement for us to remember anicca, impermanence. Remember anatta, bring it in, the understanding, the concept of not self. This is not mine, this is changing. See how it flows. See how all that can be observed is moving, shifting, changing, shifting sands. And there's nothing I can hold on to here. There's nothing I can call me, mine, myself. We can consider this because there is this very strong then. If this is one of the last fetters to go, we can know that it's a very powerful delusion, the sense of continuity of any kind whatsoever. So let's consider the characteristics, the three characteristics that the Buddha gave us. The truth of reality, that there is no self, there's constant change. This is an unsatisfactory realm, state. We want to be free of this. And the very final fetter, the last fetter to go, the final breakthrough is to break through ignorance, avijja, to full knowledge and understanding. The ignorance, that which does not see clearly, that which is creating me, mine, creating a sense of anything whatsoever to hold on to. And again, for me, these two fetters of conceit and ignorance being the very last fetters to go, and restlessness as the third, we can consider that, this is an encouragement for us to keep letting go, to remember, to consider. The path is, in some ways, we can simplify the practice and let it be a practice of not holding on to anything in this world, any experience, any thoughts of future worlds, other worlds, not to hold on to anything whatsoever. Let go, let go, let go. So I hope that this description of the 10 fetters has made sense to you, and it's probably rather incomplete. But I do recommend, if you're interested, to do some more research and study on this subject. Very helpful to consider these 10 fetters. It's a very good lens, a very good paradigm for us to consider the path of practice and the way out of suffering. Ayyā. So I'm very sorry that it's time already. It's a big topic. I'm just going to look at the chat very quickly to see if there are any questions or comments. There's one comment, which is, I have to scroll back actually, sorry. Lovely to see you all. Big greetings from all different places. Canmore too, that's lovely. Ireland, oh my gosh. Beautiful. Thailand, welcome, welcome. Thank you all so much for being here. Okay, there are just a few questions. This is a bit off topic, so I'm going to give as brief answers as I possibly can. Let's see how we go with this. Thank you, Faize, for your question. Can we say uncurbable disease are the result of our bad past karma? Very briefly, we could, but it wouldn't be necessarily an accurate thing to say, because there are actually many causes of happenings in this world, and some of them are due to, you could say, our past karma, but others are not. And so it's really impossible to say. And the Buddha said, if we try to understand the workings of karma, we'll just go crazy. So what I would say is that we can consider what can be done in this moment with whatever arises for us, not to consider why it's arisen. It's not so helpful, but actually to see how I can work with this situation skillfully. How can I develop path factors right here and now with this situation? And if we direct our attention in this way, there's really no time for these kinds of questions. We just have this much work to do. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, would you mind elaborating on delusion? Well, I think I just have. I mean, the 10 fetters, Kim, are one way of elaborating on delusion. There are so many other ways. I hope that I'll be able to address this question in future talks. That will be my intention. Yeah, getting rid of delusion would make letting go of greed and hatred easy. Absolutely. I mean, I think they're all intertwined. This is the thing. And the problem, if you like, with the quality of delusion is that it's a not seeing. So ignorance is hard for us because it's like, this is our blind spot. We're just not aware of it. So oftentimes working, like I said, with the two fetters of liking and disliking, sense, desire, and aversion, if we consider these and work with liking and disliking when it arises in the mind, then we have a way of kind of also working with delusion, kind of indirectly, but it will show us where we're ignorant, where we're not seeing clearly. And indeed, all the different ways of practice are helping us to come to the place of overcoming delusion. Thank you, Kim, for your question. Yep, that's it. That's very good, because we are out of time. Yeah, I hope it wasn't too much of a blast for you, but such an interesting way to consider the practice. And I'm really appreciating myself that I've had the chance to consider a little bit more these 10 fetters. And let's bring them in. Let's remember them and consider them and how we may be subject to them. Because understanding the fetters, looking out for the fetters, working with the fetters in this way is our way to see through them, let go of them, free ourselves up. So I wish you all every success in your practice. And again, thank you for being here today. Big blessings to all.